Let's bring in Nikki Sinclaire, who's on the other line listening, MEP, of course. Nikki, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I sit on the Women's and Gender Equality Committee in the European Parliament.
Right.
I think you said the words for me, what I've often said. Discrimination is discrimination. Discrimination creates victims, and that's what positive discrimination is. It is a form of discrimination that creates victims, and that can never, ever be allowed. I want to see 50% plus of women in our boardrooms. I want 50% of plus women in politics. But surely we need to get there on merit. And women are as talented. I totally agree with Joe. Women are as talented as men. Why aren't they?
Nikki,
but there's obviously...
Let me push back on you about this conversation about merit. Some men we know in the old boys networks and the top of organisations haven't got there on their merit because they're failing. So as women, we need to get rid of this argument that we get there on a merit, because in some organisations the doors are closed whether we like it or not, and we can be the best thing since sliced bread and they're still closed. And women need to get behind this conversation of positive action programmes, because the men don't get on the back and go, I didn't deserve to get there.
Not on the back of discrimination. Just because we've been discriminated... Well, Joe, you've obviously made your point. I'm making my point now, is that we've obviously had discrimination for generations upon generations. Now we need to move forward, but not on the back of what was done to us, about what is positive, about what women can bring to the workplace on their own merits. And yes, it's terrible. Yes, there are old boys networks clubs. When I was on national executive committees, they met in gentlemen's only clubs and I couldn't go in the bars. Yes, that is absolutely awful, but that's the culture we need to change. And the other thing that we really need to drastically change in this country, if we want women involved in boardrooms and in public life, is to actually change the whole childcare facility in this country. That's what needs to change in order to get women, because more women now for about 20 years have been graduating from university, and they start off on equal basis with men in the workplace, but somewhere between the late 20s and the 30s, that's where women fall behind, and that's what we need to look at.
You're saying that's a subtle trap that we're ending up falling into, are you, Nikki? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I do welcome the more paternity rights, because, the more paternity rights, for example, and it's been said, and it's absolutely true, unfortunately, especially small businesses, if they have a woman there who's about 23 years old and they have a male of the same age, they're probably thinking, who am I going to train up? Am I going to train up this woman who's going to, leave me for a year on maternity leave? They probably won't, and that's, invisible discrimination.
Exactly, you don't, it's even worse. But Joe's got a point. Joe's saying that we're playing... With more paternity leave, though, and the equality of paternity leave, they won't know that male or female will be taking that leave. But Joe is saying that, we are so far behind the game. I think, excuse me for paraphrasing you, Joe, but that's what you're saying. We're so far behind the game. We've got to do something drastic now. Isn't that a fair argument, Nikki?
Well, not really. No, so I've been a victim of discrimination. Discrimination is the most awful thing in the world. If you're a man and you've worked all your life for a particular job, and right at the moment that decision comes, and in case of politics where there's only women shortlist, and that man who worked for 20, 30 years for that particular moment was the only reason you're not going to get this job is that you're a male. That's absolutely awful. It's been that way for women for generations, but that's wrong. But it's also wrong going the other way around. As I say, positive discrimination is a discrimination, and discrimination creates victims, and that has to be wrong every single time.
Joe, I mean, in terms of where we go from here, is there an acceptable path where we can do this, but because I just wonder, the problem is, and I wonder how I would feel if I was, to use your term, positively discriminated in favour of, would I always think, oh, well, people don't take me seriously because they think the reason I got the job is because of the sex that I am?
Well, that's a conversation that goes on in our own heads, isn't it? I think the issue is about going back to the point of merit and what is deemed to be a meritable trait in organisations and in jobs, and that's where the skew happens. Traditionally in organisations, it's been typically, and I'm generalising, a male characteristic that would have more merit than a typically female, characteristic. So the conversation is about what merit. In the police force, you used to have to be a certain height to be in the police force, and they said, well, is this justifiable now? No, it's not. but it automatically discounted a load of women because they were smaller. Right. So they had to readjust it. So it's a conversation about the merits. I'm not arguing that of course we need great leaders at the top of the organisations, whether they're male or female. Of course they have to do that. But we've moved beyond the conversation of are women capable to do this? Absolutely we are. Just open the doors. We're as qualified, if not better qualified, than the men. It just needs to get sorted now. And that happens through positive action programmes by saying, yes, you're good enough. We want you on the board. And by the way, when you're on there, you won't be nodding through conversations or decisions. And we might bring a different approach to something.
Great conversation nonetheless, guys. I've got to leave it there. Run out of time. Thanks to the both of you, Joe Cameron and Nikki Sinclaire MEP.